The pair were found gruesomely stabbed to death in their Los Angeles area home on Sunday, December 14th. Nick Reiner checked into the Pierside Santa Monica Hotel earlier that morning with a credit card around 4 a.m., sources told TMZ. The troubled drug addict seemed, quote, tweaked out when he checked in.
It was Sunday afternoon when a massage therapist arrived at the white-gated home in the affluent enclave of Brentwood for a scheduled appointment with Rob and Michelle singer Reiner. The couple was scheduled to have dinner with Barack and Michelle Obama and others in just a few hours. That's according to the New York Times. Meanwhile, Nick Reiner, who lived in the guest house on the property, was long gone. He checked into the Pierside Hotel in Santa Monica, about 15 miles away, several hours earlier, using his credit card and apparently for just one night. What was a little bit suspicious about that was checking into a hotel at 4 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So when the massage therapist arrived, there was no one home, no one alive that is, and Nick wasn't there to open either. What this already indicates, in my opinion, is guilty knowledge. Think about this aspect intertextually. Had Nick been at the residence like Cato Kalin was, remember Cato was staying in the guest house of OJ's mansion on Rockingham Drive where Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman were killed. Well, if Nick had been there all along instead of on the run, that would have pointed to his innocence, wouldn't it? Of course, in the murder of Rebecca Zahau in Coronado near San Diego, you also had someone present in the guest house who later turned into a suspect, and some would say with good reason. Anyway, back to the article. Getting no answer at the gate, the massage therapist called the couple's daughter, Romy, who quickly came by with a roommate.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Now, the fact that Romy was with a roommate means there's not only an additional witness, but Romy likely has a solid alibi as well. It was probably immediately obvious to her that in the midst of all of this carnage, her brother had gone AWOL. Now, one thing I would like to know is, was Romy at this party as well? And the fact that it was a Sunday after the party and Nick didn't have a car meant wherever he went on foot and spent the night and the rest of the day away from home. Again, aren't these signs of guilty knowledge? It'll be interesting to see if Nick's bed was slept in that night, Saturday night. It will also be interesting to know if they've located the murder weapon and where that came from. Was it sourced from the home? Was it sourced from the kitchen? Meanwhile, Romy walked in and found her father's body and the gruesome scene of his death. When the paramedics arrived, the person said Romy Reiner told them that her brother lived on the property also, and this part's important, but Romy did not suggest to the authorities that her brother might be a suspect, as some news outlets have reported. Also, Romy did not see her mother's body in the house and learned from the paramedics outside that she was dead too, the person said, and this must have been devastating. But that in a sense is a good sign because it means Romy didn't interfere with or significantly contaminate the crime scene. I mean, it's a good sign in a purely investigative sense. But these are all issues Nick's lawyer will look at to muddy the case against his client, signs of contamination, interfering with the crime scene. Investigators did not find the son in the guest house. He was arrested without incident later that evening around 9:30 p.m. And that basically means he was away from home until 9:30 p.m. that night. And so the question is, why was he away that entire Sunday? Why did it take the LAPD gang and narcotics unit to locate him 15 miles away near the neighborhood of Exposition Park, southwest of downtown? It's also not clear, according to the article, how the police found him. That's something we still don't know, but I suppose it's possible they studied CCTV, including neighborhood cameras, as well as cameras from the nearest subway stations. I mean, they knew he was moving on foot. Now, the fact that Romy didn't suggest at the scene that she thought her brother was involved counts in her favor, just because that would be a rush to judgment. And although I think Nick would be a natural suspect in a sense, just due to his proximity and access, I mean, he went home with them after all. He was the last to see them alive after all, It's also possible that an intruder broke in, that whole spiel. Possible but not probable, but important to keep an open mind in the early stages. Of course, they found no sign of forced entry, which immediately cast suspicion on the folks who lived there, just as we saw in the Ramsey case. And isn't that logical, rational, and reasonable? And what about this? Romy Reiner did not see her mother's body. We're going to deal with that in a moment. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button. And let's continue. So Romy not seeing her mother's body, this suggests to me, and it's based on limited information, it suggests Nick killed Michelle first as she lay in bed, possibly as she slept, and she was still in bed, possibly hidden under blankets, unless she had fallen down on the floor on the other side. I suspect Nick's father, Rob, put up some kind of resistance more than his mother, which is why his body was more obviously visible, possibly beside the bed, and Michelle wasn't. That's just a hunch, but it's intertextual to the Idaho 4 case, where we saw a similar scenario where the two 21-year-olds, Madison and Kaylee, those two female victims, slept in the same bed, and remember, one had significantly more injuries than the other. Back to the article, the account of what transpired is based on an interview on Tuesday with a person who is close to the Reiner family. The person who provided one of the first detailed descriptions of the tragedy from the family's perspective spoke to the New York Times on condition of anonymity because the immediate family was not yet ready to speak publicly. Now, what is also interesting about this detailed account is that it's quite different, especially regarding Nick's mental state in the lead-up to the murders. It's different to the default media narrative.
They had an argument at Conan's holiday party, and Rob had been telling people that they're scared for Nick and scared that his mental state was deteriorating.
But the person close to the family said that nothing in recent weeks suggested that Nick Reiner, 32, would be capable of such violence. Well, let's think critically about that. Perhaps nothing in recent weeks, but we know he had once violently trashed the guest house.
Really spun out on uppers. I think it was coke and something else, and I was up for days on end, and I started punching out different things in my guest house.
There you have it from the horse's mouth. And what's going on here? It sounds like it happened at night. It sounds like it happened when he was under the influence, and it happened at that same location.
I think I started with the TV, and then I went over to the lamp, and then everything in the guest house got wrecked. Literally punched.
Did you lacerate your hands? I mean, that sounds bad.
Did you hurt yourself?
I don't even remember at this point.
And I wonder whether his account of that night is going to be similar. I don't even remember what happened. But do you see the discrepancy here? This person who's provided this account to the New York Times disputed accounts that suggested the family had been especially apprehensive in recent weeks about Nick Reiner's behavior. That's also a bit of an iffy comment because we know they were apprehensive at the freaking party the night before, along with other guests there. In other words, hours before their death, there was this incident at the party, a very public incident. People were apprehensive about this guy hours before all hell broke loose. Of course, association is not causation, and so one's got to look at the proof, the evidence in this case. And is there any? Well, it seems like there is, especially the blood evidence in the hotel. How did that get there? Nick Reiner had struggled for more than half of his life with drug addiction, but the person close to the family said they were accustomed, his parents were accustomed to working through his problems together. Except this time was clearly different. There was this spectacle, this public spectacle, which I think embarrassed his parents. And if they were usually slow to anger, I think in that context they felt he'd crossed a line. And that meant he was going back to rehab. And that was the one thing he felt he couldn't do, wouldn't do. I do think this impression that everything was fine for several weeks may have been Nick hiding what was actually going on. Carefully hiding it until at this party the truth was revealed and it wasn't pretty. And that's when the shit hit the fan. And Nick felt he couldn't face the music, that he'd not only have to go through the discomfort, the embarrassment, the chagrin of rehab, but do so over Christmas and miss all of the partying and fun that went on with it. And this isn't just ordinary partying, it's partying in Brentwood with all the schlebs. Does that make sense? Meanwhile, back to the article. On Tuesday, the LA Police Chief Jim McDonnell said that the coroner had not yet determined whether the Reiners had died on Saturday night or Sunday. That's also something that's somewhat intertextual to the Ramsey case. And that is the next element of the puzzle, time of death, and that will determine whether Nick Reiner has an alibi or not. Well, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.